Hello, everyone, and greetings from Baltimore, Maryland, the home of the Peabody Institute at the Johns Hopkins University. My name is Abra Bush, and I'm the Senior Associate Dean of Institute Studies here at Peabody. I'm absolutely delighted you could join us today for Technology for Online Music Teaching, the second in our Fall Lunch and Learn series focused on the challenges and opportunities of remote instruction for music. Before we get started, I'd also like to thank a number of Peabody staff members who are joining us today and supporting the event. Adam Scalici from Peabody's production team will be in the background monitoring the webinar and working through any technical challenges we may have. Patrick Wallen from the Dean's Office will provide additional support. And Robin McGinnis from Peabody's Launchpad is here to help me curate your questions. A very special thank you to each of them today. A few quick notes before we begin. I see many of you are already doing this, but please hop into the chat and introduce yourselves to both the panelists and the attendees. Note that the attendees cannot see who you are and where you are unless you hit that setting for all panelists and attendees. We hope you'll consider this an interactive session. So after the presenters have spent the first half of the hour or so on their presentation, we'll reserve the remainder of the time for your questions and comments. Please place your questions into the Q&A area of the webinar so that we can easily find them. In addition, as the presenters are able to do so, they will go in and answer your questions as well. So if you have a specific question for a specific person, please include their name as well. The presenters have agreed to permit us to record this webinar, and thank you all so very much. The session will be posted to the Peabody Keep Teaching website within a few days. Now, without further ado, I'm very pleased to welcome our guest presenters. Their bios are all available on our website, but in the interim, I'm very pleased to welcome Theron Feist, Peabody's Director of IT, Elizabeth Futral, one of the world's leading sopranos and Peabody's Professor of Voice, Matt Morgan, Chief Technology Officer at the Curtis Institute of Music, David Spencer, Associate Professor of Music and Faculty Fellow for Strategic Initiatives at the University of Memphis School of Music, and Justin Trieger, Director of New Media and Distance Education at the New World Symphony. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will go ahead and turn this over to my colleague, Theron Feist. Theron, take it away.
Thank you, Abra. Really excited to be here this morning. I know it might look like I'm in a concert hall at Peabody, but I'm actually sadly just sitting in my basement with a drum set behind me. Like I said, I'm very excited because mostly because of the kind of colleagues that are here as co-panelists for this conversation about tools to transform music teaching on and off campus. I suspect the majority of us are doing most of our work from off campus at this point, and so likely that's where a lot of our focus will stay. I'll jump ahead here to our agenda for today. We'll start out talking a little bit about the kind of the issues, challenges, and opportunities that are presented by our current situation. Obviously, the challenges are apparent. Remote teaching is a challenge, and I think an especial challenge for music. But we also see that there are some really big opportunities both now and things that we can do now that will really lead us to improvement in the future. We'll talk a bit about approaches and tools. We will have some kind of vignettes and examples that might reference specific tools, but in general, we'll talk generally about things. I know that people out there, there's so many tools out there. Not everyone is using the same tool set. Not every institution offers the same tool set. And so we want to be careful not to get too specific about really specific tools. And as I mentioned, we'll also have some examples of techniques that are working, and there may be some reference to the tools that are being used in those cases. And then we want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. The panelists here today are incredibly knowledgeable, and so I'd encourage you to ask your questions. all of these folks have a really wide range of experience. And one of the things that's exciting about this panel to me is just the kind of diversity of experience and background. So I think, almost any question that comes in, one of us is going to have some kind of a good answer, and hopefully we agree on most things. We might all have the same answer. So as I mentioned, one of the first things that I wanted to talk about was kind of challenges and opportunities. And in the spring, like many of you, when we had to take our entire school, both the conservatory and preparatory, off campus and online because of our pandemic situation, we really didn't have a lot of time to prepare. We were lucky because as an institution, I think we were pretty ready. And so we were able to pivot very quickly, but we also made sure that we collected data during and after the semester. And I think that, some of this applies pretty broadly, even though the next couple of slides I have are based on data that we collected at Peabody. This slide is really looking at, asking students, what were the biggest issues that you encountered? And the biggest challenges that consistently came up were things like not having good enough internet connectivity, challenges around taking things, course materials, and how those materials were delivered, and moving them from what has really been traditionally a face-to-face art, and doing that over a distance. And you can see I have a Zoom icon there for those of you who are familiar with Zoom, but throughout the presentation, we've tried to refer to video and audio conferencing instead of saying Zoom, because we know there are more platforms than just Zoom. But there were a lot of challenges around kind of learning how to use conferencing tools and having support for conferencing tools. And those were also kind of at the top of the issue list. Another piece was having instructors that were really prepared and responsive in the new format. I mean, it's a big paradigm shift. It's a big challenge. And so, the way that you prepare, what you're prepared to do, and how you respond to different situations is radically different. And so this information from students really helped us in terms of planning going into the fall and thinking about how can we do a better job. The next slide focuses on faculty. And so we collected some similar information from faculty. And this is, again, just sort of a genericized set of responses from some very specific survey data that we collected at Peabody, where we asked faculty, what are their biggest needs in order to effectively teach online? And so at the top of the list was better audio quality. We had a lot at Peabody specifically, we had a lot of faculty that we got converted to doing, using the Zoom conferencing platform, and had a lot of challenges around audio quality. And then the next one, which I think everyone can relate to, as a musician, you want to be able to play together. That's one of the kind of biggest joys and the most effective ways of teaching, but being able to play together online is really challenging because of the latency issues that we see when connecting over the internet. We also had folks saying there's challenges with different time zones. I know at many institutions we have populations, student populations that are global. We have many students who have returned to their home states or their home countries. And so managing teaching over different time zones has been really challenging. We also had a call for better equipment, both from students and faculty. And then you see in parallel with what the students said, having access to more live video audio conferencing support and better internet connectivity. So those are kind of the big challenges I think that we saw coming in from both students and faculty. And I'm going to turn over the next slide to Elizabeth and David to talk a little bit about the general best practices for online music lessons.
Shall I go first? David, you want
I'm
to?
waiting for you, Elizabeth.
Okay. I'm going to just try to touch on several things that I'm doing. And first of all, I want to say, Theron, thank you for including me. I don't feel like I know everything about technology. However, so I'm one of those maybe like the average person who is not a high tech. I mean, I'm not even on Facebook, people. Okay, so I'm kind of a Luddite, but I'm figuring it out. But I tell you, I felt a little bit overwhelmed over the summer because we had so many workshops and learning sessions, and it was great because Peabody was so supportive of all of us. And I tried to be present and be there, but I also felt kind of overwhelmed. So at some point, I realized I've got to just pick and choose what works for me because I can't do everything. I just can't take on all of this information. And that's what's working for me. So I figured out how to use Zoom. I do use Clean Feed normally side by side for the audio because I find that it still, even with the Zoom upgrade, it still handles the sound more in real time. We can talk on top of each other without blipping each other out. And it does handle the higher tessitura of my singers a bit better. The mics, of course, do more of that work. But Clean Feed, I find, generally is more helpful. Another thing that I'm doing is I've offered to my students to have 2 30-minute lessons rather than 1 hour, and some of them have taken that on, and I'm enjoying that because I get to see them twice a week rather than once, and the half hour goes by really quickly, and that's good. That's a good thing for both of us. They stay in it, and we use the time, I think, more efficiently because we know it's only 30 minutes. I jump in there pretty quickly and get going. So that's been helpful to me for those who have chosen that. Another thing I'm using is VoiceThread, and I'll talk a little bit more in depth about that later. But that's a way for me to connect with my students in an asynchronous technology, which I am having fun with it. I'm trying to figure out more ways to use it. So I welcome any advice from anybody out there who's using that too when I do that little demo. And I'm also trying to put together, usually I take my students out to do a community-based concert every semester. And of course, we can't do that this semester. So one of my students has volunteered to kind of lead the way of making a virtual concert with the studio. And the thing that I'm liking about this is that she's really taking ownership of it. She's learning how to deal with the whole organization of the thing, where I usually do that, but she's making the call to the students for them to make their videos, and then another student is helping her with the technological stuff and how they're going to actually put the concert together using iMovies or whatever they're going to do. And to me, this is fun because I've sort of given the students a chance to show me what they know, and I'm learning from them, and they know a lot more than I know in about some of this stuff. So I'm trying to keep my ears and eyes open to them and what they know and how they can help us be more successful and more helpful to each other in this time. And they need to learn how to make videos because they're doing all kinds of auditions that use video auditions these days, and competitions and auditions for grad schools and blah, blah, blah. So they need to get good at that stuff. So this is a great opportunity for them to grow in that area and for me to figure it out too. So I'm talking too much. David, I'll give you a chance.
Thanks. I would concur much with what Elizabeth just said. And backtracking a little bit on what Theron said in the previous slide, just talking about practices and things like that. One of the things that we have tried to do here, and as the fellow here for strategic initiatives, one of the things we approached at the outset was just the fact that there are so many tools. And we've actually taken kind of the opposite approach from some institutions. Instead of trying to throw every possible tool out there, as Elizabeth said, I think, for those of Elizabeth and I are both in applied instruction. I'm the professor of trumpet here as well. So I think for us as an institution, we've really tried to pare down what we do and not confuse faculty, but give them enough tools that they can do their jobs well. For us, it really came down to a three-tiered criteria as to what we were going to try to promote as our best tools that would produce best results. And for us, that's first of all the quality of the interaction that we're trying to do. Like most institutions, and those of you out there, there are two sets of things we do, right? There's applied instruction, basically, and there's academic instruction and classroom instruction. And the tools for both of those are a little bit different, although we use basically the Zoom platform for everything. It's the only platform supported by our university. So we chose to really kind of limit ourselves to that. It's not that faculty don't have an opportunity to use other things. They do, and some do, but we're trying to focus for our students' sake also, so that they don't have to learn multiple platforms to try to access instruction. So we use Zoom, and in the applied areas, like Elizabeth just said, we really love running that alongside with CleanFeed. And not to just repeat everything she said, but that it's important also, I would say, to have a backup because of these things like connectivity. It's always so important. I could tell you a quick story about how we ramped up and were really ready last March, and everything was going great. I was home, and I have a 1 gigabyte fiber connection to my home, which is fabulous. So I had the bandwidth, I was all ready to do everything. And the morning of the first day of instruction, the whole internet infrastructure went down. So luckily I had a backup, and we defer to something like FaceTime usually as our backup if we can't do that. But the great thing about running CleanFeed and Zoom in parallel that Elizabeth mentioned is that Zoom audio can act as the backup if CleanFeed goes down. So we kind of, it's a kind of insurance policy in a way for those of you that are teaching applied instruction specifically, that want that better audio, to have that backup system. But quality of interaction, ease of use, and accessibility. One of the things we had to do as an institution too, being here in the Memphis region, not all of our students had really strong access to the internet from either their home or some public place. So we also set up some distance learning rooms here within the School of Music. We got a special dispensation from the school to allow certain students on campus, if they needed to go to those rooms specifically so that they could actually have a very strong internet connection. That doesn't work if you live away from Memphis, of course, but a lot of our students do live here. So that's something you also might want to think about if you're challenged with that connectivity problem with your students, is actually setting up spaces that have a robust connection. And I can turn it back to whomever at that point.
I think, Matt, you were going to cover this slide.
Yeah, I think I'm on. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Morgan from Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. One of the things we found rapidly when moving to online teaching is that sort of where we focus our efforts on computing and computing devices changed. I wanted to read a quote from Steve Jobs, because I think every seminar like this needs a quote from Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Linus Torvalds or someone. So this is in the 90s. He said this. He was talking about he was releasing the first Next. He said, if you want to make a revolution, you've got to raise the lowest common denominator in every single machine. You cannot use features that are not built into every computer. So what he was trying to do was, release a much more powerful computer. It supported 1 million pixels on the screen, et cetera, to bring up what was possible to do with computers. one funny thing looking at this now, and is a few years later, that lowest common denominator became the browser. And those of us in nonprofit IT, there's always more to do, and we don't want to be money limited. So we're always looking at bang for the buck. So for me, working in web digital IT, if it didn't happen in a browser, I almost wasn't interested, right? Because that's my lowest common denominator. Well, we found out right away, or at least I found out, that that was not going to do it for some of the things we need to do in conservatories now. We're going to talk about this more later. Theron mentioned it some, the need to play together. The browser introduces levels of latency factors that are not present in other kinds of software. So we are looking at non-browser sort of solutions to things. But as far as optimizing for music, there are a few fairly obvious things that we also didn't have, like our students didn't have microphones. Our students didn't have good speakers. Our students didn't have good headphones. Some of our students didn't have computers, really. They were used to coming to campus, doing their email on their phone. And since all our scheduling systems and the student-related business systems worked on their phones in a browser, they didn't really need much else. They would go to the computer lab sometimes when they needed to print or whatever. And so now they needed computers, and they needed microphones, and they needed other kinds of equipment. We've also spent a whole lot of time working on the software configuration. We haven't even gotten to some places that some of our colleague institutions have gotten, as far as the more advanced software for playing together. Even so, just think about all the things you've had to do with Zoom to make sure that it was using the right microphone, and multiply it by the number of people you support. So the way we work has changed quite a bit. In the past, Curtis, we didn't really have the staff to directly support student and faculty computers. We would help, we would make sure things worked, we would get them to the point that they could do things themselves, but we've gone quite a bit further, even while trying to maintain this sort of approach of making sure they can do it themselves too. Theron, do you want to skip forward? So yeah, this is a simple description of what we all need at a minimum. The microphone and stand can be pretty simple. This is not a great microphone, but everybody told me I started sounding better when I started using it. It has a little stand. It has I don't know if you can see it, but it has a little button there that changes the pattern of sound it focuses on, which can be important when you're dealing with echo or something like that. Computing device, almost everything works. In March, April, when our faculty really went all out to make sure they could teach their classes and their lessons, many of them asked us, can I use this? Can I use that? Can I use FaceTime? Can I use Duo? We said yes, by any means necessary, get your class going. And whatever you have, make it work for you. We'll do our best. We have focused on supporting Zoom, Clean Feed. We're working on some other ones. For us, support means I'm responsible for making it work. It doesn't mean if I don't support something, I won't help you with it. And I think probably a lot of my colleagues in other institutions deal with it the same way. There are things that we know better. We get some mileage out of specialization, but not supporting something doesn't mean we don't help. We're just doing everything we can to get everybody working. Webcam and stand. One interesting thing at Curtis is I had been buying a lot of laptops anyway. Curtis is a small place, but in a few buildings along the street, and for staff especially, you walk to a meeting down the street, it's great to bring your laptop. So we had a lot of cameras built in. Of course, that may or may not have been true for faculty and students, like I was saying. We have, by the way, there is a grant, the CARES Act from the federal government. We've been using that to buy equipment for faculty and students. I think a lot of other institutions may have been doing the same. Fast, reliable internet is one of the hardest parts. Our students are all over the world. Not a lot of people have a lot of choices for what kind of internet they can use. There's the hotspot. If you've got bad internet in your neighborhood, you can get a 3G or 4G hotspot, but if you have bad internet, there's a good chance you don't have good phone connections too. So we do have some people who are just struggling with where they are and the ability to get high speeds. We're going to need even faster speeds to really get synchronous music playing.
One thing I realized that I somehow left out of here, and I saw it mentioned in the chat, is at least at Peabody, when we put together packages to provide to faculty for remote teaching, in most cases, we did provide a set of semi-open studio headphones. In fact, you can see Elizabeth, I believe, has on the same headphones that we provide. And I think someone mentioned them in the chat. Those may be the AKG 240 model, which allow you to hear the room as well as what's coming through the speakers on the headphone. So just thought that was worth mentioning. I also saw some things coming through the chat, and maybe one of our moderators could post a link to our student technology recommendations that we've made at Peabody. We have a pretty concrete list of items, because I see a lot of questions about models and things like that in the chat. And we've made some recommendations to our students, and then we've also provided many of the same pieces of equipment to our faculty members at Peabody. And we'll keep moving ahead in these slides. So Justin and David, I believe this is your slide, and I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your guys' hearts.
David, do you want me to take lead? I see him saying yes, shaking his head. Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here. I wanted to actually start by just going back a little ways and talking real quickly about some principles that David, I know, agrees with, because we've talked about this multiple times. And what you see here, again, synchronous learning, what we're talking about is real-time communications. Whether or not that includes the ability to play in time with one another over a platform like this is another matter, but generally synchronous refers to just real-time communications. So wanted to establish that as just a baseline understanding. But when looking at all of these tools, as you see listed on the slide here, what's first important to really assess is what the outcomes of your particular activity are meant to produce, or what you would like them to produce. And I know David agrees with this. That consideration, those goals should supersede any focus on a particular technology and what kind of functionality or quality, perceived quality it may provide. Because if there may be reasons for complexity, for ease of use, for resources that would demand using a particular platform, assuming it provides a way to reach those goals or outcomes that you set for yourself. So again, another important part about that is assessing resources. We've been talking about internet connectivity as being a crucial one, and someone did ask in the Q&A, and I'll answer it now. We normally use speedtest.net just to do a quick down and dirty bandwidth check from any host or device. There are app versions, you can run it in a browser, but there are multiple solutions. That's just one that we use. So once you've assessed your resources, including internet connectivity, what kind of cameras, speakers, headphones, devices your students and faculty have, when you make your choice, it's important for the faculty member, and I'm stealing one of David's lines, to be an expert at that platform. Because what causes hangups in this situation more than anything are technical issues. And it's really, in our opinion, on the instructor to really understand what's going on technically and to be able to address situations and problems when they come up. Because we all know that the IT departments are really helpful in providing support, but in the moment, you need to understand what's going on and how to attempt to fix a problem. So digging into this, what's on the slide here. So again, all of the topics that are listed to the right are obviously important, and each of these platforms has different demands of each of these different subjects. Zoom is the platform we're using today. It's a very commonly accepted platform these days. It's familiar to most people, which again may be a reason to consider it over others. Just simply, it's ubiquitous. People understand it. They know how to work with it. So if you're working with people who are technically not inclined, it may be a simple choice just because they're already using it. They're already familiar with the interface. Webex is a Cisco solution. It's like Microsoft Teams in a lot of ways. There's a lot of additional features like screen sharing we're doing now, instant messaging like we're doing now inside of Zoom, the ability to record and to stream, which we are also doing now inside of Zoom. So again, understanding what your goals are, if it's beyond just the teaching, if you want to be able to share what's happening with a wider audience, if you want to be able to archive and document what's happening and then share it with your students or faculty after the fact, these are considerations to make before you even look at the technology tools. I'm actually not super familiar with Jitsi Meet, so if someone else wants to comment on that, by all means. But as far as EduMeet, that's a cloud-based platform that's being developed in Europe that's become quite popular. It leverages a technology known as WebRTC, which is basically just a protocol for video communications. What's nice about it is it's entirely in the browser. There's no applications. It's cross-platform. So basically, you click a link and you're in a web browser video chat room. And it's very flexible in terms of what it can do from a sound and video perspective, from point to point, person to person, or multiple point connections. More interesting from our angle are the last two, which Lola is a very specialized application that provides the ability to play in sync with someone over a very fast internet connection. Now, that application is free. It's a Windows-only application, but it does rely on specific hardware and quite robust internet connectivity that you typically can only find at universities or institutional infrastructure. UltraGrid is less strict. It's also a video and audio transport system, like all these other tools. It's a little more complicated to use because there's no graphical interface. It's very powerful though, and it works with most consumer and professional video and audio devices, which is a nice feature. And like some of the other tools, you can independently control how much bandwidth is consumed by the video stream and how much bandwidth is consumed by the audio stream. So you have some control. If you're working in a bandwidth limited situation, you can kind of get those to fit inside whatever the pipe you're using is, and give preference to the audio if that's more important, or if video is more important, you can give preference to the video stream. The audio only, so we've talked a lot about CleanFeed, SoundJack, JackTrip, JamKazam. JamKazam actually does offer video as well. So, and those tools are audio only and allow for synchronous connections and activities. And some of them specifically leave out video because video is typically the culprit in terms of slowing down the speed of transmission and the capture of things and getting it to the place it's meant to go. That's why there are audio only solutions in JackTrip, CleanFeed, etc. The ability to actually play in sync with these tools over commercial internet services, like what we're all using from our homes, your mileage will vary. There is an actual real perceptible delay that causes playing together in real time to not work. And that's about a 40 to 45 millisecond latency, which is really restrictive. So even with those tools that are on the audio only that in theory provide the ability to play in sync with somebody else, it really is distance limited to municipalities or kind of county regions. You can't really go across the United States and be able to do that with someone who's on the West Coast if you're on the East Coast or vice versa. David, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, can I just add one thing just to both video and audio? Because I know a lot of people have had questions to me and to you about simultaneous performance, right? Things that we use with the tools like Lola and UltraGrid that offer that capability at an institutional level. There's also one called MVTP as well, It is a very specific hardware-based piece of equipment. This is the best way to put it, that you have to have on both ends. And that works very well also, if you can afford it. But I guess my point is our point is, there are solutions if you really want to have live synchronous performance. It's going to take a robust internet structure. And like Justin said, it is really institutional right now, unless you live in some great gigabit city like Chattanooga, Tennessee, and where everybody is supposed to have a 1 gig connection. You could theoretically do it within the city limits of Chattanooga, Tennessee. But I think it's important to understand that there are tools. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it's not possible to play synchronously over the network. It actually is, but probably not from our homes.
I want to touch on one question that came in the Q&A because it's pertinent now, but the question is about combining audio-only solutions with a video solution. In most cases, that works quite well. If, for instance, you're using Jack Trip, Clean Feed, SoundJack, combined with a Zoom conference, there may be some slight discrepancy in sync between audio and video, but in that situation, the audio becomes, or the sound becomes, your primary reference, as opposed to the video, which is just a visual confirmation that things are happening. So it's a little complicated running 2 platforms at once, but it can be quite effective. And just wanted to point out with Jack Trip, which is probably unfamiliar to most people, but they just released or announced a small appliance which reportedly works with Amazon Cloud Web Services. So you can basically obtain like a $30 little appliance, plug a microphone and an Ethernet cable into it, and run Jack Trip in the cloud. And that is a really effective way. That system doesn't enforce any formats or compression on audio. So it is literally what you're putting into your system, you're getting out on the other end, which is quite nice from a fidelity perspective. Theron, I think we can go to the next slide.
Great. Yeah, I was going to say we need to move forward, so you have some time for asynchronous still. So we'll move to the next slide.
Just a note here, I think most people are probably aware that Zoom updated the quality of their audio format recently. Thanks to them for that, actually, because that was an initiative by a number of universities collectively lobbying the company to make that change. The quality is quite good. It is only currently available for laptop or PC versions of Zoom. It doesn't run on mobile. So last thing I want to say about all of this is that the quality and fidelity will be one thing from a technical standpoint that an application is capable of, but the circumstances and environment in each location are going to have a huge impact on the perceived quality. So that comes down again to microphones, mic placement, speaker selection, headphone selection, internet quality. All these things will have ultimately an impact on what your perceived experience is. And so don't just get stuck on one solution. Continue to try them, find the one that gives you the best quality of experience, and then become an expert in that. If Zoom is that, that's a great solution. Thanks, Theron. That's enough for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add on to this that, you can dig into all of these solutions, but again, if we're not plugged into the internet, and if you're not separating out that sound source, i.e. your microphone and your sound output speakers, you're gonna have issues. So sometimes it comes down to the most minute of things that really affects greatly the audio.
I would also put a plug in if you didn't get a chance to watch the Lunch and Learn 2 weeks ago, that a couple of the faculty members from the Peabody Institute Recording Arts department did a whole session which covers microphones and placement and how to optimize a room at home. So I would highly strongly encourage anyone with an interest in that topic, trying to optimize their recording or their lesson audio from home, to check out the recording of that webinar. And with that, we'll move on to record, share, analyze, and discuss asynchronous approaches. And Elizabeth, I think you're going to talk on this slide.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about VoiceThread. I tried Panopto and I liked the features on VoiceThread better, so I didn't ever hop over to that. So I'm going to try to share my screen and show just a little bit of VoiceThread. Let's see. So it says I can't do that while the other participant is. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Great. All right. So this is VoiceThread. VoiceThread is supported by Johns Hopkins, Peabody through Johns Hopkins. So we all have access to it, but you can get it without going through your institution. And so I'll just show you. It's pretty user-friendly. Like I said, I'm not good at all this stuff, and I could figure it out. So I think you all could as well. So this is home for me, and I have stuff here, and I go here, and I can see, well, let's see. I have groups somewhere, but I don't know where they are right now. Anyway, so singers can send me a video, say, of them, of their singing, and I simply upload the link to VoiceThread, and here it is. It takes a little bit of time to process it, not a lot, but you have to be patient. And then I can view, I didn't do hers, but I can view it, and then I can respond to it as it's playing. I'll show you maybe a little bit of this one. I think I forgot to do share sound. But anyway, she's singing. Okay, pretend you can hear her, and I think I forgot to get permission, so that's good. So then I would just stop this, and here's a little plus button, and it gives me the opportunity to either chat something to her, or I could I could call her, I don't know why. I could record myself saying something, or I could also video record myself telling her something. Hi, Alexandria, blah, blah, blah. Stop recording. Oops. And then you say it uploads that and saves that. And I could do this throughout. Oops. Okay, so it shows me what I did. You all can hear me, right? Okay, so, and then I can go through the whole recording that way, and she'll have a whole compilation of me telling her things all through the video at certain points. This is what you're doing there, and you should be doing this, or whatever. So I really love this. And then I send this whole thing back to her, and she can watch it and see all the little points. For me, this is a really wonderful way to keep in touch with my students, and they with me through the week when I'm not with them. If they, just made a video to send to a competition and they want me to see it, and I don't have time, we haven't had a lesson, or we're not going to before they have to send it off, I can really respond to it in an asynchronous way, at 9 o'clock at night if I need to, and I haven't had time during the day. So I love that. Also, I've put on some exercises, and I'll just, do the exercise, and then they can respond. That's me talking about an exercise, and then they respond over here, and I can respond to their response, and we have a little chat kind of going about the thing that I posted. And another way that I like to use it is my student. Can I make sound come on this while I'm doing this? Anybody know?
Yeah, when you share your screen, you have to actually include the option that is to share.
Yeah.
But
I was
think
wondering if I could do it while I was in the middle of it.
we may
No.
run out of time before.
Okay, I'm not going to show anymore, but I think there are lots of options here for VoiceThread and ways to connect with your students. So I'm not going to do any more, but and I'm sure people have done things that I haven't thought of. So I'd love to get some feedback and some other ideas. So anyway, thanks.
I would just add that despite its name, it works great for all kinds of applied subjects instrumentally. It's not, I think a lot of voice teachers do use it because it's called VoiceThread, but it works wonderfully for the trumpet thread or trombone thread or piano thread.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of what you can do asynchronously that can help you get around things like perhaps a less reliable or less fast internet connection, to be able to provide feedback that maybe isn't in real time, but can be incredibly valuable. And I've heard from many faculty who are using not necessarily VoiceThread, but I mentioned Flipgrid, Panopto. I know other people use other tools. This isn't a comprehensive list, in conjunction with live Zoom sessions where maybe they don't like the quality to play together, but they might do exactly what Elizabeth showed you, where they're recording, sharing the recordings, providing some analysis, and then getting together and actually having a real-time conversation about what they saw.
Yeah, it's that layering of technologies that I think is important.
And I think I saw in the chat also a mention, sorry, David,
no, it's okay. I was just saying, as we were referencing earlier, that it's really important not to get fixed on sort of one platform and make sure the activity really justifies the platforms that we're using. Yeah,
I mean, and even in the conversation we were having before the session started, Elizabeth, you gave us this anecdote about a student who was having a problem in Zoom, and then I can't remember, you said they just said, well, let's work on diction instead. And just things like that, the being flexible and combining different things together and so on, seem to be so powerful. I'm going to keep moving on because we do want to leave time to respond to things that came through the question and answer. And this was just a slide that was sort of a static illustration of what Elizabeth was starting to show, kind of laying out what you can do in VoiceThread. I've used VoiceThread before I ever worked at Peabody, and really it was originally put in place in places that I worked doing instructional technology as an alternative and a potentially more engaging alternative to things like the text-based discussion board and Blackboard. But when I got to Peabody, I always thought, well, VoiceThread would be a great place to have a musical conversation. So I'm very excited to see it being used in this way. That's really the end of the formal presentation. And at this point, I think we would be happy to respond to questions and have an interesting conversation about what we've just presented.
Thank you all so very much. And thank you all, as we've run a little long on the presentation, which is totally okay. I appreciate each of you kind of leaning in and answering questions in the Q&A as they've come up. So thank you for that. There are a few questions, however, that continue to be outstanding. There were a number of questions that came, I was kind of watching the chat scroll through, and there were some questions around ensembles. What solutions have any of you seen to be effective for ensembles, either for synchronous or asynchronous rehearsals and performances? I'll turn that over to any one of you who wishes to respond.
Maybe I can start. This is probably, and it would be great for Justin to weigh in on this too, but it's probably the most difficult part of this whole chapter of things. I'm alluding a little bit. I know I've had conversations with Justin over the summer about how they were ramping up to do X, Y, and Z, and then it's difficult unless you have sort of institutional based things. And I just want to pivot very quickly because I want to be brief in my answer, but it's really important to understand that I think part of the problem that we faced with other instrumental ensembles and choral ensembles is that we're trying to do the same thing that we normally want to do, only over networks. And that probably isn't going to happen unless we have institutional grade sort of network services. So one of the things we've done here at Memphis is really try to rethink what all that means. And Elizabeth did refer to this a little bit earlier, and I just want to pick up on it again. The opportunities that are created by our situation, I think, lend themselves to teaching some skills that we normally wouldn't have time to teach, like recording and making videos and doing the kinds of things that our profession actually demands as an instrumentalist or as a singer. These are ubiquitous things that we have to learn how to do. And if I look back on our own institution, and we don't teach our students how to make videos, quality videos. We expect them to do it, but we don't ever teach them how to do it. So I think with ensembles, you have to sort of think in the same way. How can you use platforms that can help them maybe learn about recording techniques or remote recording, because that's a huge part of what our profession does as well. I've been involved. I played last week my first live performance since March. And I thought, I mean, this whole time though, I've been doing remote recording for people. And we don't teach that either. You know, we don't teach that to our students, and it's something really that they need to know about. So I would say we need to rethink what we do ensemble-wise rather than trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Thank you very much. How are other institutions supporting this new influx of remote tech needs among their community? Directing users to your general IT help desk, training faculty or student workers to answer questions for students, creating self-help guides, etc. Maybe if each of you could just take 2 sentences and 3 sentences and talk about how you've done it quickly. I'll go round robin. Theron, do you want to talk about what we've done at Peabody?
Sure. 2 sentences is tough. There's so much to say, but I would say kind of all of the above. We really, I think, did a good job of putting together kind of a unified support front that included not just IT, but included recording arts, the music technology programs, the library, the institutional studies. And so, you know, it wasn't like it all fell on one group, but we do, certainly we use a ticketing system, which helps a great deal. And we can track and we can manage requests, whether it's for equipment or it's for home audio setup consultation with recording arts. So that's my
Thank
2
you,
cents.
Theron. Matt, what have you done at Curtis in order to address this?
Well, all of that, what I would add that might be peculiar to Curtis is, from a staff perspective, we've actually decided to go office optional. We are not going to require staff to come back to the office, which means we can do a lot with our spaces. So we might, you know, one of the things that's tricky with everybody at home is printing. Now, we would love to go paperless. It's going to take some time. We're certainly doing our library is finding digital sources of music, but we'll probably take some spaces and turn them into print centers that then we then staff with students. So that might be one additional kind of thing we're trying.
Interesting. Thank you so much. David?
Just really quick, I think we established some technology guidelines for students. We put together a thing we call Tech Boot Camp. So we get all the students together and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And we also, like I alluded to earlier, tried to really curate the tools that we're going to use rather than try to just throw out and support a bunch of things that we wouldn't be very good at.
Thank you. Justin?
We have a very similar approach. So again, we are defocusing on any particular solution and instead doing skill building and best practice guides around topics like audio capture, video capture, and then also just best practices from a pedagogical standpoint inside of these platforms. So it's in-person instruction combined with some documentation that we share with the students.
Great. Thank you all. We are running very low on time, and I would love to hear from each of you. And Elizabeth, I'll include you in this one as well. Maybe we'll start with you, if that's okay. As we think about the future and we think about, all of the challenges and the opportunities that we're experiencing right now, are there any tools or any techniques or anything that you're doing right now? And I would extend that to my IT friends as well, that you think you may continue to use in the future? Or what are the things that you think that we need to be aware of as we push forward into this brave new post-COVID world at some point?
Well, as much as, we sometimes get weary of having Zoom meetings, doesn't have to do with my studio particularly, but I mean, think about it, Abra, when we have faculty meetings, everybody shows up. I mean, that never happened before because people couldn't. They weren't always there on Wednesday. They were in, California or France or wherever they were, and they couldn't be there. And so to me, that's a wonderful thing to see all these faculty members that I never see, And so there are elements like that that I think are amazing. And also, even our studio class, I can see everybody clearly. And, you don't have these sitting by themselves where they always do in class and these two always sitting together. Well, they're all mixed. I can send them in breakout rooms. I can make them mix and mingle with each other in a different way, but it's really good and healthy for them. And so those kinds of things that weren't happening before, I think are wonderful, and I will keep making them happen somehow.
Thank you very much. Justin.
So we're very focused on actually figuring out how we physically re-inhabit our space once the building opens and our students return to Miami. A lot of that is actually just protocol around safety more than anything else. We've benefited from the fact that our building is very interconnected space to space. So we have a lot of fiber optic infrastructure and traditional audio lines in between rooms. So what we envision for large ensemble activities, for instance, is having sections in different ensemble spaces and then creating kind of a live sound environment so that they can hear each other and see each other, but they're not physically inhabiting the same space. And in that way, we can still do things like orchestral recording. We can prepare work that is going to be performed in physically secure ways, physically safe ways. But it's more about the protocol for welcoming the public back into our physical spaces, and then also our fellows and visiting faculty members.
Thank you very much. David.
I would just say that the opportunities here that we've really seen is this opportunity, and me speaking not as a technologist, I know there's a lot of technologists here, but as an artist and a teacher and a performer, it's really important to understand that the pedagogy of what we do and how we teach is the most important thing. I mean, ultimately, we want this technology to be actually invisible. I know we're focusing on it today, but the art of what we're really all trying to do, including our good technologist friends, are to make that seamless. So I think it's really renewed an emphasis on pedagogy and approach and how we go about teaching in this environment effectively.
Thank you very much. Matt, any final words from you?
Well, one thing that's already true at Curtis and probably lots of other conservatories is we have an extremely mobile constituency. All our faculty are performing professionals. We already spend money to send students to New York or bring somebody from New York to Philly or anywhere. We already have students who spend part of the year touring. We already have all these reasons to support remote connections. I think more than not, we're not going back, basically. Most of this is going to stick.
Thank you, Matt. I would agree with that, actually. Theron, final words.
Wow, going last after all that. I mean, I think everything that they just said, certainly at Peabody, we're working towards and hoping for some kind of return to campus. And we don't have the luxury of the brand new building infrastructure that Justin has, but we're doing our best to build, a really a viable technology infrastructure on campus so that we can support making these things more ubiquitous. We want them to be easy to do. We don't want the technology to get in the way of teaching and learning. We want it to enhance it. But yeah, everything that everyone else said applies to us as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. Theron, Elizabeth, Matt, David, and Justin. We really appreciate you being with us today and sharing so much terrific information about how we can all be more successful online, both synchronously and asynchronously. I would also again like to thank Adam Scalici, Patrick Wallen, Robin McGinnis for your support today. You've been invaluable in the background, helping us get through this last hour. Finally, as a reminder, these sessions will occur every other week throughout the fall semester. A full list of upcoming sessions, presenters, and previous sessions are all available on the Peabody Keep Teaching website. Our next session will actually be with the enrollment management professionals. And I did note a little bit of chatter in the chat about what's going on with auditions. So you'll want to tune in 2 weeks' time in order to ask them about what the plans are for the coming audition season. We hope you'll consider tuning in again to any of these sessions. At the end of today's event, a brief survey should pop up in your browser. We look forward to your feedback and recommendations for future topics. In addition, we'll send you a link to the resources, the recording, links, or other resources within a day or two to those of you who have registered for this session. Feel free to share any of the links as you wish or that are helpful to you. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe. Please wash your hands and please enjoy the remainder of your day. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.